People like to label it quickly. You're too quiet. You're too intense. You take things the wrong way. From the outside, it looks like sensitivity. It looks like social awkwardness. Sometimes it even looks like arrogance. A person who feels misunderstood most of the time is often judged as difficult, distant, or emotionally complicated. Society doesn't slow down to understand them. It just moves on and leaves them standing there wondering why every explanation feels like a translation that never quite lands. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't see. Feeling misunderstood isn't a flaw. It's usually a byproduct of depth. When your inner world is layered, when you think in nuance instead of slogans, when you feel things before you can neatly explain them, misunderstanding becomes almost inevitable. The problem isn't that you can't communicate. The problem is that most people listen only for what's familiar. Anything that doesn't fit their mental shortcuts gets distorted. People who feel misunderstood aren't broken communicators. They're often operating on a different frequency. They notice subtleties. They hear what's not being said. They think in patterns instead of sound bites. And in a world that rewards speed over reflection, that creates friction, a lot of it. One type of misunderstood person is what you could call the silent observer. This person learned early that speaking doesn't always lead to being understood, so they started watching instead. They sit quietly in conversations, not because they have nothing to say, but because they're collecting information. They read body language, tone shifts, inconsistencies. When they finally speak, it's usually precise, sometimes unsettlingly accurate, and that accuracy makes others uncomfortable. People prefer predictable responses, not insight that cuts through their self-image. So the silent observer is labeled as distant or cold, when in reality, they're just selective with their energy. They've learned that being fully seen by the wrong people is more dangerous than being misunderstood. Another type is the over-explainer. This is the person who keeps adding details, metaphors, clarifications, hoping that this time the meaning will land. They replay conversations in their head, wondering where it went wrong. They're not insecure in the way people think. They're conscientious. They care about accuracy. They hate being misinterpreted because they know how easily words can be twisted. Ironically, the more they explain, the more others tune out. Simplicity is rewarded. Complexity is seen as weakness. So the over-explainer is often dismissed as emotional or confusing, when in reality, they're trying to protect the truth of what they feel. Then there's the betrayed soul. This person didn't always feel misunderstood. At one point, they trusted deeply. They opened up fully, and when they did, their words were minimized, mocked, or used against them. After that, something shifted. They became careful, guarded. Their silence isn't shyness, it's self-preservation. They speak in fragments now, testing the waters before revealing anything real. When others misread them as closed off or emotionally unavailable, it reinforces the belief that being fully understood is rare and risky. The betrayed soul doesn't want applause. They want safety, and they've learned that safety often comes from being partially invisible. Another common archetype is the internal translator. This person thinks in images, emotions, and connections, but has to convert everything into language that others can digest. By the time the thought comes out, it already feels diluted. In their head, the idea was alive. Out loud, it sounds flat. This creates a constant sense of being out of sync. People respond to the words, not the meaning behind them. So the internal translator walks away feeling unseen, even after speaking. Over time, they may stop trying altogether, deciding it's easier to carry their world alone than to keep watching it be misunderstood. What all these types share is not weakness, but awareness. They are more conscious of inner experience than surface-level interaction, and that awareness comes with a cost. When you see more, you expect more. When you feel deeply, shallow responses sting more. When you value authenticity, small talk feels like noise, so you start to feel like you don't belong, when really you just don't blend easily into environments built for emotional shortcuts. Stoic philosophy talks about control, but not in the way people assume. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about understanding what's within your power and what isn't. Being understood by everyone is not within your control. Being clear with yourself is. People who feel misunderstood often spend years trying to adjust themselves to be palatable. Softer words, smaller reactions, less truth. And that's where the real damage happens. Not in being misunderstood, but in self-erasure. Dark psychology reveals something else. When people misinterpret you, they often project their own limitations. If someone can't imagine depth, they won't recognize it in you. If someone avoids introspection, your self-awareness will feel threatening. So they simplify you. They reduce you. Not because you're unclear, but because clarity would require them to look inward. Introvert empowerment isn't isn't about becoming louder. It's about becoming grounded. When you accept that misunderstanding is part of being complex, you stop chasing validation from people who can't offer it. You choose precision over popularity. You choose alignment over approval. And slowly something shifts. You speak less, but with more weight. You explain less, but feel more at peace. You stop trying to be understood by everyone and start being honest with yourself. Feeling misunderstood most of the time doesn't mean you're alone. It means you're early. Early to insights. Early to emotional literacy. Early to seeing beyond surface narratives. The world eventually catches up, but only if you don't abandon yourself first. So, which of these types feels closest to you? Or maybe a little bit of all of them? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If this made you think different, hit subscribe. We go deeper every day. Don't forget to like the video.